Hello, and a very warm welcome to all our loyal subscribers of Echoes du Net CONGOLAIS. We are incredibly grateful for your continued support and commitment to our program, which strives to bring clarity to the complex issues that shape our nation. Today we're tackling a topic that deeply resonates within the Congolese political landscape: the recurring ritual of political dialogue. As we stand on the brink of the 2026 elections, with the recent Jambola dialogue still fresh in our minds, it's crucial to dissect this familiar process. We're going to dive into a thought-provoking analysis put forth by our editorial team, which presents a compelling, even unsettling argument. Their argument is that these dialogues, far from being true exercises in national reconciliation, are often nothing more than elaborate political scams. According to our analysis, these highly publicized meetings are frequently strategic maneuvers designed to achieve two main goals for the ruling power. Firstly, they serve to create a facade of legitimacy, especially after controversial events like coups or disputed elections. Secondly, they set the stage for what they call electoral heists, predetermining future votes. This is a very serious accusation. A process meant to foster unity is being used to consolidate power and undermine the democratic will of the people. Throughout this video, we will explore this argument in detail, using a clear and factual approach to separate rhetoric from reality. Our method will be simple and evidence-based. We will follow a chronological path, from post-independence to the present day. For each case, we will present the context and examine the evidence, drawing from media reports, official documents, and eyewitness accounts. Our goal is to give you a complete understanding by weighing the strengths and weaknesses of this perspective. We believe in a thorough, fact-based discussion, avoiding abstract jargon and staying connected to the everyday lives of ordinary Congolese people. We will begin by examining the dialogues we consider legitimate, such as the Sovereign National Conference of 1991. Then we'll move on to the more controversial period, the dialogues it sees as survival schemes and manipulations. By the end of our program, you will have a clearer picture of the history, the evidence, and the blind spots. So stay with us as we unravel this crucial element of our country's political life, a story of hope and profound disillusionment. Table of Contents. Part 2, Act 1, The Legitimate Dialogues. Section 1, The 1972 Conference, A Lifeline for the Revolution. Section 2, The 1991 Sovereign National Conference, A Nation Reborn. Section 3, The Fruits of 1991, A Blueprint for Democracy. Section 4, The 1994 Peace Forum, Preventing Civil War. Our historical story starts by looking at a few talks that we believe were real and honest. It says these talks happened because people truly wanted to help their country. The first example it gives is the National Conference of 1972. To understand why this event is so special, we need to go back to a very wild time in Congolese history. President Marien Ngouabi's government, which took power in a coup in 1968, was under a lot of pressure. The revolutionary spirit he promoted was being tested by fights within the country and his power being questioned again and again. This wasn't a time of peace or calm. It was a time of deep trouble for the government. What was happening was a series of attempts to take over the government. In 1969, Bernard Colelas tried to take over. In 1971, it was Pierre Kinganga. Then, in February 1972, the February 22 movement started another uprising. This was led by Lieutenant Ange Diawara. According to our story, President Ngouabi's choice to call a national conference was something he wanted to do, not something he was forced into by outside pressure. He saw it as a necessary step to save his revolution from falling apart because of its own internal problems. The goal was clear: to figure out the problems hurting the country and find a way for everyone to work together to stop more bloodshed and more trouble. This wasn't about making a stolen election seem right. It was about staying alive. This conference was a very important time for the Congolese Workers' Party, the Marxist-Leninist party in power, to look at itself. The aim was to bring the country and the party together with a shared goal. It brought different groups together to openly talk about their complaints and their different ideas. Unlike the later talks that we criticize, the 1972 conference was about fixing problems within the group. Its purpose was to make power stronger, not by trickery, but by building a more solid and united political base. It aimed to heal the wounds inside the revolutionary movement itself. Our main point here is to show the reason behind it. By showing the 1972 conference as a step taken to prevent problems, we set a standard for what a real, honest discussion should look like. It's a process started to fix a real problem that's happening for the good of the country, instead of just pretending everyone agrees. However, one weakness of this quick look is that it doesn't talk about what happened afterward. Even though the conference might have made things calm for a while, it didn't completely get rid of the deep problems among the powerful people in Congo. Ngouabi's murder 5 years later, in 1977, is a harsh reminder that the solutions found in 1972 didn't last forever. The second example of legitimate dialogue, and perhaps the most significant, is the 1991 Sovereign National Conference. This event wasn't something the government started. It happened because people pushed for it really hard. In the early 1990s, the PCT's one-party rule under Denis Sassou Nguesso was facing a lot of pushback. Labor unions, students, religious groups, new political movements. They all wanted one thing: an end to the strict rule and a move to a democracy with many parties. The economy was in bad shape, and people really wanted political freedom. Unlike the 1972 conference, this wasn't something the head of state willingly did. As we point out, President Sassou Nguesso was forced to give in. The pressure from the streets and different parts of society was just too much to ignore. From February 25th to June 10th, 1991, Brazzaville became the center of an amazing national discussion. It was more than just a meeting. We describe it as a big group sigh of relief and a fresh start. For the first time, Congolese citizens from all walks of life could openly talk about their problems, criticize the government, and together plan a new way forward for their country. The conference was declared sovereign. Its decisions had to be followed and were more important than all existing government bodies, even the presidency. It actually took away President Sassou Nguesso's executive powers and put in place a temporary government led by a prime minister, André Milongo. The delegates worked really hard to break down the old one-party system and build the foundation for a new democratic republic. The air was filled with deep hope and a feeling of national renewal. This was a time when the people, through their representatives, took charge of their own future, holding the old government accountable and drawing up their own path forward. Our analysis strongly highlights how much this event changed things. We present it as the gold standard for what real discussion can achieve when it's driven by what the people want and protected by its own power. The strength of this argument lies in the clear results that followed, which we'll look at next. The conference wasn't just talk, it created a real plan for change. One thing we might overlook, though, is how we idealize this moment. Even though the conference itself was a huge success, it also started political rivalries and tensions that would come back with terrible consequences in the years to come, proving that even the most successful discussion can't erase all future conflicts. The success of the 1991 Sovereign National Conference isn't just about the speeches given, but about the real changes it brought about. We want to make it clear that this talk led to big, lasting changes. Its biggest achievement was creating a new constitution. This paper wasn't just any old document, it was a game changer. It set down the rules for a modern democracy. It officially brought in political pluralism. This ended the one-party rule and allowed new political parties to form freely. The Constitution said that political power could only be gained through voting. This was a clear rejection of coups. The conference planned a smooth transition period, with a timeline for a constitutional vote, and then a timeline for presidential and legislative elections. The whole process was designed to be open, include everyone, and be fair. And the process worked. The constitutional vote happened. The Constitution was approved by a huge number of people. In 1992, Congo held its first presidential election with many parties. The process was praised as free and fair. A Congolese citizen showing his inked finger after voting, 1992. Pascal Lissouba won the election. Sassou Nguesso, who came in third, accepted the results. This peaceful transfer of power was a direct result of the 1991 conference. It showed that if talks are truly in charge and represent everyone, they can create a stable political system without violence. We connect 1991-1992 to the success of the talks. We link the process to its outcomes: a new constitution, free elections, a peaceful transfer of power. This success makes the later failures even sadder, showing a potential that wasn't kept up in the long run. Section 4, the 1994 Forum for Peace. Preventing civil war, which we point to as a good example. The last good example of talking things out that we're looking at is the 1994 National Forum for a Culture of Peace. The situation for this forum was, sadly, very different from the hopeful feeling of 1991. The democratic gains from the early 1990s had started to fall apart. The 1993 legislative elections were strongly argued over, causing a big political problem between President Pascal Lissouba's group and the opposition, led by Bernard Colelas. This political deadlock quickly turned into fighting in Brazzaville. The country saw the scary rise of armed groups linked to politics, the ninjas loyal to Colelas, the Cobras who would later join Sassou Nguesso, fighting against government forces. The nation was on the edge of a full-blown civil war. Brazzaville was split into areas controlled by different armed groups, and violence was everywhere. It was in this incredibly tense and dangerous situation that President Lissouba took action. Working with the Director General of UNESCO, Federico Mayor, he organized the forum from December 19th to 23rd, 1994. The clear goal was to pull the country back from the edge. This wasn't about changing the constitution or holding on to power. It was about stopping the killings and finding a way to talk things out politically. Having an international group like UNESCO involved added a layer of fairness and trust to the process. Most importantly, as we note, the forum had all the important groups in the nation taking part. This included the government, the opposition parties, and representatives from the very armed groups that were fighting. Getting these warring groups to sit at the same table was a huge achievement all by itself. The talks focused on getting rid of weapons, making up, and creating a political environment where disagreements could be solved by talking instead of fighting. The forum acted as a crucial safety valve, allowing the main players to step back from armed conflict. The immediate result of the 1994 forum was a big calming down of the political and military situation. It achieved its main goal. It stopped the country from falling into a full civil war. According to our writing, it eased the political tension and paved the way for peaceful elections in August 1997. Even though the peace it brought was fragile, it lasted for several years, giving the country a time of relative calm. This point is strong because it highlights a discussion that reacted to a crisis but aimed for a truly good outcome: peace. The blind spot is that, even though it opened the door for the 1997 elections, it didn't fix the deep-seated distrust that would eventually lead to the terrible war that broke out just before those elections could happen. Now let's talk about the second type of talks our team found. These are the ones that seem like carefully planned tricks to make a government look good and rightful. This time started after a violent takeover in June 1997. This is when Sassou Nguesso came back to power, and the president who was chosen by the people, Pascal Lissouba, was removed. After taking control with military force, the new government in Brazzaville faced a big problem. People didn't see them as rightful rulers, both in their own country and around the world. We believe that to fix this, the government started holding talks to make it seem like everyone agreed and accepted them. This way, they could change the story of the war. The first of these was the National Forum for Reconciliation, which happened in January 1998. Our team thinks this was far from a real effort to bring people together. We sharply call it a meeting of the winners of the war. The forum wasn't a meeting of equals trying to find common ground. Instead, it was a carefully planned event where the new rulers controlled the story. The main goal was to make the takeover seem right, even after it happened. The forum acted like a court. The government that was removed, led by President Lasuba, was called bad guys. Killers. Meanwhile, Sassou Nguesso's United Democratic Forces were shown as the heroic saviors of the country. This twisting of the talks was made even more complicated by the person who was supposed to help, President Omar Bongo of Gabon. We point out a clear problem of someone having two jobs that don't mix. We say Bongo's role was unclear, acting like both a judge and someone involved in the fight. The mediator wasn't a neutral referee. Many reports said that Gabon had taken sides during the conflict in 1997, supposedly helping to get weapons to Sassou Nguesso's forces through Libreville. Also, the mediator's wife, Edith Lucy Bongo, was President Sassou Nguesso's daughter. These connections cast a long shadow over whether the mediation was fair and made it seem even more like the outcome of the talks was already decided. The Brazzaville dialogue in 1999 followed a similar pattern. It was called to deal with the ongoing fighting in the southern parts of the country. This is where militias loyal to the previous government, now part of the National Council of Resistance, kept fighting. Even though an agreement to stop fighting was signed, we believe it was an agreement made under pressure. It made the military win stronger instead of helping to find a real political solution. These first two talks after the war, in our opinion, set a pattern. Using words about peace and coming together to make a victory won by force seem right, pushing aside those who lost, and creating a false appearance of being a rightful government when it didn't have the people's vote. From what we've seen, the government didn't just hold random talks. It built a whole system, a political and institutional setup. This system was made to handle disagreements and make the government seem fair through these discussions. They created special jobs and groups to make sure the suggestions from these talks were followed. Important government jobs were used as a way to bring people into their side. It looked like things were moving forward and being watched, but not much actually changed. We're going to list some of these appointments. Marius Muambenga was made the commissioner in charge of making sure the peace agreement was followed. Adamo Luc Daniel Mateda became the High Commissioner for Civic Education. Dominique Bassaïla was appointed commissioner for the recommendations from the 2015 talks. The most lasting figure was Martin Ngouabi, the permanent secretary of the National Dialogue Council. These appointments created a group of political managers. This became a formal system through putting people in key spots in government departments, especially the Ministry of Interior. Zéphirin Mbulu was the Minister of Interior. The government in power kept control of how the talks and elections were run. It was a closed loop. They called the talks, controlled them, and then carried out their own ideas. The whole system became more complex. They controlled what was discussed, who was involved, and what came out of it. Official monitoring groups were just for show. The suggestions were rarely put into practice. It gave the impression of being open and wanting to change. This system became a permanent thing, a way to keep going without giving up any real power. Over the years, the goal of these talks changed. They went from making things okay after a conflict to trying to manage politics before problems even start, especially as elections got close. A great example of this is the Brazzaville dialogue in 2009. President Sassou Nguesso was getting close to the end of his second and last term. A stronger opposition group was forming, led by Clément Mirassa and Matthias Zon. They started asking for talks to change how elections were run. They were worried about the elections being fair. They wanted to talk about making sure everyone had an equal chance. The government agreed, but the whole process was full of problems. We see that the main leaders ended up boycotting. The reason was that they couldn't agree on who would co-chair the talks for the opposition. The government's preferred candidate, Miokono Anguilla, was rejected by the main group. The boycott made many people think the talks weren't real. It turned them into just a chat between the ruling party and a few friendly opponents. The government kept going with the talks and the election despite the boycott. The results were easy to guess. The 2009 elections happened with lots of people complaining. And there was a lot of harsh treatment, including arrests and scaring opponents. This pattern, the opposition asking for changes, the government controlling the talks, the opposition boycotting, and then a disputed election, started happening again and again. The talks didn't help everyone agree, but instead they were used as an excuse to push the government's own plans. It let the government say they had talked to people, even though they were really just ignoring those who disagreed. The dialogue in Ewo in 2011 and the dialogue in Dolisi in 2013 made this strategy even better. We believe the whole process was just a show. Some politicians like Tsati Mabiala and Nick Filla were chosen as the official opposition to make the talks seem real. We suggest that there was political bargaining going on, where participation was bought with bags of money and daily payments. The main topic was still how elections were run, but there was no real plan for big changes, like an independent election group or a trustworthy electronic voter list, The Sibidi dialogue in 2015 was, in our opinion, a real turning point and a political change. The stakes were higher than ever before. President Sassou Nguesso was legally not allowed to run again. The government changed the constitution to let him have another term. We call this a clear political scam, a constitutional coup. This decision caused a reaction like never before. For the first time since 1997, a big and united opposition group came together. Andre Okambi Salisa, Parfait Kolelas, who were longtime opposition leaders. The Froked IDC CJ3M group was against changing the constitution. They held a counter-dialogue in Diata, Brazzaville, showing that the government was losing its grip on what people believed. The government continued its own dialogue in Sibidi, which approved the constitutional vote. Even with huge protests and a united opposition, the constitutional change was passed, leading to a rigged election in 2016. Then, a harsh crackdown. Jean-Marie Michel Mokoko was put in jail. Okambi Salesa was put in jail. Many others had to leave the country. A new fight started in the Pool region, a dark turn for the country. Wesso 2017, Owando 2022, Jambala 2025. These talks followed the same expected plan, becoming a steady income for a political class that went along with it. After 2016, the united opposition broke apart. Key figures accepted the process, taking part in the Wesso dialogue to get ready for the legislative elections. We're talking about old political tricks, with the same people from the government and the opposition. The goal, a fake agreement to keep the government going and ensure its election wins. Jambala, February 2025, right before the presidential election in March. New political figures appear, whom we see as just actors. The dialogue creates a list of suggestions, many of which are old ideas, with little hope that they will actually be used. As always, money is handed out, then a family photo. For us, the joke is shown by the strange outfit of a presidential candidate at the event, a visual clue to how fake and expensive the process is, whose real goal is political approval and to keep the rigged elections going. One of the most damaging results of using political talks in such a sneaky way has been the breaking up and weakening of the Congolese opposition. The strategy of bringing people over to their side, where joining these government-backed meetings gets you money or political jobs, has always caused problems among the opposition. The strong and united front that showed up in 2015 was a rare moment of working together. But, as we're pointing out, this group, the Frokad, IDC, CJ3M, quickly fell apart. The chance to join the next talks in Wesso in 2017 was too tempting for some leaders. They chose to make a process seem right, even though they had said it was wrong before. This broke the victory agreement they had signed. This cycle of splitting up and bringing people over creates a political world where a real and united opposition struggles to stay alive. The government gets good at finding and promoting easygoing opponents who are happy to play their part in the political show. These people make the talks and elections seem fair and open, while the real voices of disagreement are pushed aside, left alone, or punished. The people are left feeling confused and betrayed, as leaders who once stood up for them are seen shaking hands with the very people they were against. Beyond just dividing people, the consequences for those who refuse to play along are serious. The time after the big government problem from 2015 to 2016 is a scary example. Important political figures who really challenged the government, like General Jean-Marie Michel Mokoko and André Okombi-Salisa, were arrested, put on trial, and sent to prison for a long time. Many other political leaders and activists had to leave the country to escape being treated badly. This creates a widespread feeling of fear that stops political disagreement. The message is clear and easy to understand. Real opposition that threatens the way things are won't be met with talks, but with the full power of the government's harsh system. This scary feeling goes beyond just the political leaders and spreads through society as a whole. The times after elections often have more violence and harsh treatment, especially in areas seen as strongholds of the opposition. According to a recent report from Freedom House, human rights in Congo have gotten much worse. The NGO Action Center for Development has written about a shocking increase in cases of torture and bad treatment by the police, going from 13 instances in the first half of 2023 to 122 in the same time period of 2024. Arrests and detentions without good reason have also gone way up from 31 to 251. This harsh truth shows that the peaceful agreement made during the talks is often followed by government-approved violence against citizens. The constant repeating of these fake talks, where suggestions are made but never acted on, has really made people lose trust. High-level meetings that are just for show and broken promises make people stop believing that talking can solve problems. The whole process starts to feel like a trick. When voters think the outcome is already decided and that these talks just support the current government, fewer and fewer people care to vote. Why register? Why vote if your vote won't change anything? Everyone shares the blame. The government in power has the most responsibility. But opposition leaders who join in this charade also play a part. Even the global community and their helpers aren't perfect. The worst part of this whole system is that it creates a never-ending cycle of political standstill. These talks, held every 2 or 3 years before a big election, have become part of the problem, not the solution. A lot of time, energy, and government money are spent on these budget-eating messes, as we call them. This focus takes attention away from real problems. This way of doing things puts short-term political survival ahead of long-term growth. Legitimacy doesn't come from good public services or better living standards, but from being able to handle the ritual of talks and election deadlocks. In the end, the system is incredibly strong, but also incredibly weak. It's strong because it manages disagreements and makes everyone agree. It's weak because it relies on keeping people out, stopping them from speaking up, and not having real support from the people. Our study shows a fascinating and deeply troubling story. Its biggest strength is clearly showing, with proof, the difference between talks that truly help the country and those that were just used for political gain. However, this study isn't perfect. Its description of the good old days, especially the events of 1991, might seem a bit too perfect. It doesn't spend enough time looking at the hidden problems and political fights that these talks, despite their successes, couldn't fix for good. Also, while we rightly put most of the blame on the government in power, looking deeper into the role of the opposition and the international community's involvement could add another layer of understanding. These limits, however, don't make its main point wrong. They just show ways to look even deeper into this sad cycle of hope and disappointment. To break free from this bad cycle, the suggestions from these talks need to stop being just ideas and become real promises with consequences. This means a big change towards being open and taking responsibility. Any future talks will need a truly independent group to watch over things. This group shouldn't be made up of people chosen by politicians, but by trusted people from community groups, religious organizations, and legal professions. The way elections are run must be completely taken out of the government's hands. An independent election commission needs to be truly independent, not just in name. Its members should be chosen in a clear way, with many groups involved, and it should have full control over its money and how it operates. In the end, it's up to the people of Congo to demand this change. As we've seen in this study, waiting for politicians to fix themselves is a waste of time. The way forward is for citizens to stay watchful all the time. This means actively writing down facts, recording promises made during each talk, and publicly holding leaders accountable for what they do and don't do. It means saying no to getting paid just to show up and demanding leaders who serve the public good, not their own pockets. The history of political talks in Congo is a painful lesson, but it's also a guide. It shows that when people are united and determined, like they were in 1991, they can change history towards fairness. The challenge today is to find that spirit again and collectively refuse to be part of the political show. It's time to demand an end to political scams disguised as talks, and to insist on a real, inclusive, and binding process of national reform. Only then can the country finally get past the cycle of election problems and build a future where the government is truly of the people, by the people, and for the people.